How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. And you know what time it is. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back, and relax, and welcome you to season 2, episode 8 of the SPMA Council podcast. I tell you, we're getting up there in terms of episode counts. Like we're rolling along. We're definitely on track for double digits once this term ends. I say once this term ends, and it's unbelievable because we're in friggin' November right now. Um, I hope everyone tuned into at least a few of our episodes in October. We had lots of exciting guests there. And if you haven't tuned into our month in review yet, it's available on SPMA Council's YouTube channel for you to take a look. So go ahead and look at that if you need something to do. But moving on to the main event here, my special guest co-host, first time on the podcast, and his actual podcast debut, so not a big deal. The pride of Stellarton, Nova Scotia, as you can see, as our video listeners can see by the flag, Liam Nielsen, the man, the myth, the legend. How's it going, buddy?
Yes, sir. Well, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you for having me on. Happy to be here and excited for this episode.
For sure. How you been? How's the semester been for you?
It's been good. Obviously, an adjustment, as I'm sure everyone else is experiencing, but it's good to. I think remote learning is sort of a blessing in some ways. I was able to go back home out east for 3 weeks, and then I'm back in St. Catharines now. So it's nice being able to sort of work from anywhere and set your own schedule.
Definitely. No waking up for those ghastly 8 a.m.s. Although they're probably good for you in the long run because you never know once you get into the industry what your hours are going to be like. So, moving on to the actual episode, we had MLSE, one of MLSE's social content coordinators, Adam Krueger. He's been working on a variety of social media accounts, including the Leafs, the Argos, and he helped launch the Leafs' first ever TikTok account, which is rapidly growing in followers. Great guy to have on. Liam, what'd you take from the episode, man?
Yeah, I think the stuff that really stood out for me was sort of his insights on how these pro sports teams are running their social accounts.
Mhm.
Obviously we're seeing it from a fan perspective, and we're seeing sort of the teams bantering with each other on Twitter, or, making a funny Instagram post with the newest, trend or meme or whatever. Um, but it was cool to hear sort of the strategy behind that and what goes on behind the scenes. I think that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, and it's done with It's done with strategy. It's not done just to throw content out there. It's done with a purpose, and that's good to see. And going on to our show's theme, getting out your comfort zone. Adam's start was literally the epitome of getting out of your comfort zone, shooting your shot through a DM way up in the 500 level of the sky. Sorry, way up to the 500 level of the Sky Dome, because a person that worked for MLSE was there while he was ushering. That's basically getting out of your comfort zone in terms of trying to get a job into this industry, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty crazy story. Can't wait for the listeners to hear it. I was pretty floored when he was telling it, but yeah, that's about, getting out of your comfort zone to the absolute max right there.
And it just shows you, you have to be willing to take a bit of risk in this industry in order to succeed. And you never know how it's gonna pan out. Even if you don't know much about the role that you're applying for, whether it be paid or volunteer. So, the worst thing that can happen is that someone that you're reaching out to says no, and that's not the end of the world. As much as it is, as much as it can be harsh, yeah, you just have to dust yourself off and keep on chugging along. So, before I move on to the episode, this episode with Adam Krueger, Liam, any thoughts, man? Any final thoughts?
I think we sort of touched on it all. Like I said, it was a great conversation with a guy with a pretty interesting job. He was mentioning, he thinks it's one of the best jobs you can find out there, sort of social media content creation.
Give
So it's
yourself
definitely a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Give yourself a pat on the back too. This guy was absolutely on fire as a co-host. I tell you right now. So without
Well, you got me blushing now.
That's called patting the ego, my friend. That's called patting the ego. And without further ado, let's send over to MLSC social content coordinator Adam Krueger. We hope you all enjoy. Cheers, folks. All right, welcome again to another episode of the SPMA Council Podcast, episode 8. We're getting up there, and we got another good one today. Joining us now, Brock is from MLSE. He's their social content coordinator and a Brock SPMA alumnus. Please welcome Adam Krueger to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, guys. Excited to get on and talk to you guys about what I do and a little bit about my journey and a bit about good to reminisce about Brock too. So
For
happy
sure,
to be on.
for sure. All right, as we always like to start off the show with this question, a little bit of a tradition around here. So, first question for you: what makes your story unique?
I think for me, it's probably maybe about how I actually got my role initially. So I got it basically off of a DM, which it's kind of funny with the field that I currently work in, obviously in social, and but it was so I basically was working. Graduated in 2016. Didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but so I was doing some part-time work with the Blue Jays, working as an usher. So game days, I'd highly recommend it to anyone that can do it. It's quite a fun part-time job. So I was doing that, and previously I'd interned with TFC. Got to know everyone around the office and had a pretty good relationship with them. But I was at working a Jays game and was on break and checked Twitter and saw that the guy that was their was their social lead at the time was at the game, and he was in the fives and way up there. So I sent him a DM and said, hey, come by my section and maybe I got a spot for you to sit. And he came by and we ended up talking for a couple hours. And then he was like, hey, we have this opening. Do you want to try it? So didn't really know working in social was a thing. And other than, that his job existed, but was able to get my first job off of that. No interview, no anything, just slide right in and sign my freelance contract maybe a week after that DM. So maybe a little bit of a moral of the story to always shoot your shot, but it was kind of by chance and random, but I think that's kind of a unique way how my journey started. And then currently, I think the unique part of what I've gotten to do is work on every single brand in Toronto. I growing up in Mississauga, I was a big Toronto sports fan. So Leafs, Raptors, Jays, TFC, Lesser, and then obviously the Argos as well growing up. And to get to work at MLSE is great. And a lot of people work, SPMA grads work there and they're kind of specific to one brand maybe, or their ticket sales for a couple brands. But I've been able to work on every brand at MLSE to some extent. Raptors a little bit less so, but everywhere else I've definitely been on and pretty active with. And that's been a really unique opportunity to work on all these brands and that I grew up loving as a kid. So definitely those two parts there would be unique parts. Sorry, can you hear my dog, by the way? She's kind of making some noises in the background.
Let's just call that a special guest appearance for now. Just to give some unique content to the podcast. We do appreciate our canine listeners. Let's just say that. But honestly, that's an interesting way to get into the sport industry. And the point on shooting your shot, it's become more and more common as we enter into this this market of unpredictability. You never know what you're going to get out of a role if when you're entering it and you don't really know much about it. And the moral of the story is always just try. And at the very least, you gain a contact you could use in the near future, or you gain a skill that you can use in future roles. But a great case of how just being confident in taking that shot can pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, definitely, with everything that's going on now, and everyone's connecting online more and more and more. And I think if it's LinkedIn, or if it's specifically for social space, if it's going to be Twitter or Instagram, obviously I'm on those a little bit more active. And I think all my colleagues in the sports social media world are all active on there. So never hurts to follow and shoot a DM or start up a conversation, even if it's just, hey, I'm a student, I'm interested in working in this field. Is it, can you give me any advice? Would you be able to meet up for a virtual coffee, or just, can I shoot you an email? Anything like that. People are nice usually, and they'll get back, and maybe you get just some info off of them, or maybe it leads to a job, who knows? But it's never a bad thing, I think.
That's awesome. So we're going to jump to the next question here now. So you mentioned, Adam, that you graduated in 2016 from Brock, so relatively recently, but you also had the opportunity to return for SPMA Alumni Day recently. So we're wondering if you could sort of touch on what that experience was like, and maybe give some tips for current Brock students on how to interact with alumni at events like that. And hopefully we'll get to those events back and running someday soon.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So I've actually been back 3 times now, each for alumni. Wait, 3 times, right? Yeah, 3 times, I think. And each time was a little bit different. The first time I was on a TFC only panel right when we came back, and I was kind of a small fish on a big panel, because we were with fortunately at TFC there was a lot of Brock alums, so there was 5 of us on a panel. Might have been before you guys were there, but we were all up there, and so I was kind of the lowest on the totem pole per se. And then went back last year, did a panel, or 2 years ago, and did a panel. And then last year I actually presented, which was really fun, in intellectual property, and give a little bit of a speech on copyright and how that works in social. So that was really, really fun. And I always love going back, because, I actually, as a student, I remember a lot of the people who came back and spoke. And I think that's kind of, it's always good to give back and share my knowledge, specifically my role too, because I don't think there's too many, when I was in school, I didn't know this role existed. And if I did, I would have tried my hardest to get it. So, because it's, to me, I think outside of maybe Kyle Dubas and being a GM and actually making the calling the shots on rosters and stuff like that, what I get to do and be with these teams and create content around these teams and interact with fans and be basically a professional fan, I think is one of the coolest things. So if I would have known it existed, I would have went for it. So, but that's why I like to go back. And then just from for kids that are, or any of the students that are at Alumni Day, once we can actually get back physically together, I think maybe do your research before the panel. LinkedIn creep, if you maybe not logged into your account, but LinkedIn creep, don't maybe not send them a request, but just find out a little bit about them. And then when you go up, you can say hey, I worked in wherever they work. You can go and ask them about the role they have, about how they got there, and people like talking about themselves. That's why I'm on the podcast here. So you guys can just ask them about themselves and how they got there. They were all in your shoes, and they understand. And I assume most of the alumni are approachable. So I would that would be my suggestion for that.
A little bit surreal, presenting as an alumni, you're at a point where you're listening to those alumni, and now boom, you're in that exact same position. So a little bit of a surreal feeling, I think.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And hopefully I was an exam question. That kind of was the goal. Go back and be an exam question, but
That'd be.
Yeah.
That'd be. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if Alumni Day does come back in some form this year, definitely when it's announced, SPMA's experiential learning coordinator gives us the heads up. But if that is happening this year in a virtual format, then new listeners, please take advantage of it because it's one of the highlights of the year. A lot of alumni are there to share their stories and give back, so it's a great chance to experience that and grow as a professional. Going into your student journey and then SPMA a bit further. In your final year, you took an internship job with TFC as part of their team ops crew. What drew you to that role, and did it in any way set the foundation for your future job positions at the company?
So to answer the second part, it didn't really set any foundations. The role that I currently am in has nothing to do with team operations. I mean, I work with the team operations people, but it has any of the skills that I picked up during that definitely don't apply directly. But what I did, what that role did help me do is make connections, and that's ultimately, I think, what all internships are for. Is
Definitely
a lot of the, you're going to be, there's very few people, like I didn't get a job directly off of my internship in the department that I worked in. It's about building those relationships and connecting with everyone that you can across, in your time that you have there. So that's one thing that was really fortunate about TFC. Was I was at the training grounds for that internship. There was only 2 interns, and then the rest of the TFC crew, which was like team ops and high performance and the academy and coaching and all this stuff. And being up there was awesome. We got free food, which was really nice, lunch every day. But the main thing was making those connections because it was such a small and tight knit group. And that ultimately is what helped me get the job that opened up that wasn't in the department. It's because I knew the person that was hiring just from that internship. But the reason I took the team ops and kind of went team ops, you guys, I don't know if you've heard, but MLSE, they send out their internships in a huge batch. Basically, it's just a bunch of job descriptions and you have to read through them all, right? So I think I was in Australia actually, because my girlfriend was down on exchange. So I went down and was in Australia, and I was just looking up the MLSE jobs. And I remember just thinking team ops sounded cool. I liked TFC. They had just signed, that was 15. So it was Javinko's first year. So that was really cool. And I always kind of followed them casually. And then it was like, oh, okay. I like TFC. I think this might be a better role for me. It might be a little bit less at the time, less hype than, Leafs marketing or Raptors marketing, because those were obviously bigger, maybe higher profile internships. And I like TFC, and I was like, this sounds applicable to some of the experience that I had volunteering with the Brock baseball team. So I volunteered with them for 3 years. And one of the years, the last year, I was actually the GM of the Brock baseball team, which was a really cool experience, and getting to work with the coach at the time, Jeff Lounsbury. And I basically, helped coordinate running the business side of the Brock baseball team, from fundraising to running the concession stand, to running social, which was really a really cool experience. And that, kind of had some of the stuff that I'd picked up, I thought could apply to the TFC job. And that's ultimately, obviously what my intern boss thought, is that I had applicable skills from that volunteer. And then also I volunteered at the World Juniors in 2014, one of the ones in Toronto, whenever it was in Toronto. And that was directly in team services, which I think also helped apply, because that was like helping the teams move into their locker rooms and making sure they have food and making sure they have everything that they need. And that was kind of a volunteer experience that I think, again, helped me have applicable skills to that job or to that internship.
All right, we're going to move into the next bit here. So you've occupied a bunch of positions at MLSE. most of them centered around sort of community management and, obviously the social media management now. We're just wondering what aspects have stood out to you about those different roles. So you can go sort of position by position, whether that was basic interaction with consumers or what you did to sort of make a difference in that role.
So the title, though the title has changed, community manager, social content coordinator, it's actually all been the same job basically, which is managing the social media platforms for the brands and the teams that are under MLSE, and then on the content creation side as well. So it's kind of just evolved. The role is basically the same, but the title evolved to kind of better reflect what we do. From community management, community manager is kind of an older term, a marketing term that they use, and that we used to use. And then now, if you're hired into my role, you'd be a social content coordinator. So, but across all of them, it's just been really the differences in fan bases is probably one of the coolest things that I've had the opportunity to work under, like building content for the Leafs. A Leafs fan, you have to build differently than you build content for an Argos fan, build differently than a TFC fan, build differently than a Raptors fan. And I think that's kind of been pretty interesting to have to work within all of those brands and within all those fan bases. And I think that's partially something I can do because I'm actually a fan of all these teams and grew up a fan of all these teams. So it comes across to me organically. But I mean, it's been pretty cool to be on all of them, to be honest. And it's I love being, we always kind of talk about the accounts. If you're going to be the voice, there's two things: is you can be the voice of the fan or you can be the voice of the team. So there's like that brand, those are the kind of the spectrum. And I always like being the voice of the fan personally, and posting stuff that our fans are actually engaging with. And that it's basically like, so during a game, instead of just posting like a touchdown GIF, it's like, let's post something that our fans are actually talking about and engaging with. And I think that's really the way that I've wanted to push our accounts, the accounts that I'm on, is to be that voice of the fan. So that's been part of the community management portion, is that you are like the official voice of the Argos fans or the official voice of the Leafs fans, the Raptors fans, TFC fans. And that's, to me, is a really cool part of the role.
It is. And I mean, taking that fan-centric approach is is great, because, shows that the account understands the market, instead of just putting out content just for the sake of putting out content without any purpose. And in turn, even though you might not be going from majority brand specific perspective, that can evolve from that, or get organically. And from that content, fans can recognize their brands through what they're thinking. And hopefully with that content, the team's able to sell more tickets. And that's easier said than done. But when content does that, it at least keeps the conversation going, which is extremely key, especially not so with like the Raptors and the Leafs, because they already have a unbelievable following, but more so with, say, TFC and Argos, where where getting fans and seats is a big part of making sure they're successful. Moving on to the next, to going further into your role, and it's an aspect of the industry that's high demand, and especially now, and it's a job that's pretty much pandemic proof, because the demand for it doesn't waver. Fans are constantly craving content that's entertaining and makes them want to tune in. So what strategies do you consider to produce quality content on the platforms that you currently manage?
Honestly, it's just my I just look at content and is it good? Do I think it's good? Do I think this is engaging? Do I think this is fun? And that's ultimately how I look at all of our content and make sure that if I don't find it fun and engaging, I don't think our fans are going to find it fun and engaging. So that to me is just from a basic standpoint is how I kind of think of the strategy there. I think with the pandemic, it's kind of shifted. Obviously, habits of people have kind of shifted and trends have shifted, and you just kind of have to be online. And for me, I consume a lot of content, which helps drive my decision making for our content, basically. So I follow 1,500 accounts on Twitter, and a lot of them are sports professionals or sport. I have almost every sports team in that I can find, and curate lists and make sure that I'm constantly on the pulse of what content's performing, who's making good content, how can we take that, how can we learn from what other people are producing to create our put our own spin on it, or can we take creative inspo from other people. And that's kind of honestly what social media sports is kind of a cliche of everyone kind of like a trend comes up and then everyone does it. Like you can see like the how it started, how it's going kind of trend. Like everyone was jumping on that, and that's kind of honestly part of the job is just making sure you're online and connected to all those trends. But yeah, again, just for quality content, I think for me it's just, do I like it? Do I think this is engaging? And do I think this is good content? And that's how ultimately I judge a lot of the content. But that's also partially why any account that you follow, if somebody is, especially a sports team, if it's a team of one or two, it's you're going to get the voice of that account is going to be the voice of the person, or the person that sets the strategy for that account. So some of your that's why, and they also change too, right? Like, so like if somebody was working at a team and then left and go to another team, then that voice is going to go from one team to another team, and you might lose. Like you might be like, oh, the Argos are the best team in the CFL, but then somebody else comes in and then they move, and then somebody else has a best account. So kind of like it goes with the people. That's an interesting part of the job as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned sort of, hopping on the trends and tailoring your social content around that. I think that's definitely where things have been heading the last few years. The one I always think of is the Sacramento Kings in the NBA. I find their content on Twitter very engaging. They like to, poke fun at other teams. There's a lot of creative stuff. So that's great stuff there. Speaking of trends, we would be remiss if we did not talk about the Maple Leafs TikTok account. So we're going to ask, how did that come into fruition? I feel like I blinked and TikTok was all of a sudden the biggest social platform in the world. So what was it like sort of developing a strategy to use an app that was growing that quickly?
So TikTok obviously has been a huge platform now for the last couple years. Sports teams some teams were really quick to adopt on there, and some teams were a little slower. And I think MLSE as a whole, we were on the slower end, just because, jumping on new apps and everything, you spread yourself quite thin. We're a team of, there's not many people on our social teams considering how many, teams we have. So we're a team of about 10 people that run all the accounts. So that's, adding another account for every team is you think it's easy, but it's another account to worry about, another account to manage, another account to post. So I think MLSE we kind of took a little bit of a slower pace to just, if you jump on every app that comes out right away, you're going to be spread way too thin. So like, oh, why don't we have an account on ByteDance? Why don't we have an account on Yik Yak when that was a thing? Like there's different things that you can kind of, jumping on every app doesn't make sense sometimes strategically. So I think TikTok, we kind of wanted to see it out a little bit. And then ultimately for me, I was on the platform, engaging on the platform. I like TikTok. That algorithm is extremely addictive, and the content that it feeds you is incredible. And I wanted to get our teams on it. I put the Argos on it in like August of 2019, and that didn't really go well because Argos have a smaller following. I didn't really put a whole lot of effort into it, but I kind of got a little bit of a seed in there. And then ultimately our first official capacity that MLSE went on was with our mascots. So the mascot combined account with the Raptor and Carlton, that kind of came from just conversations I was having with, with my boss and looking at what other mascots were doing. And Benny the Bull is the big example, has like 3 million followers now, and he is incredible. And I thought mascots are a great kind of space for us to kind of dip our toe in, but not actually put the team accounts on. So we did that and launched that in like February. So I was managing that, and then obviously quarantine hit, and then priorities changed, and then the Leafs brand was like, let's get on board and let's get a Leafs TikTok account going. So that was, and then ultimately I was the one that was managing the mascots account. So they were like, do you want to manage the Leafs account and help build that strategy? So, built that up and launched in, I don't even know when it was, June now, I guess, July, maybe, I don't know, right before the, right before the play-in game. So that was really cool to be a part of, and, still managing it. And I love the platform. We're growing, we were fast to grow at the beginning, but we're a little bit stagnant now because we took a bit of time off in a little bit of the break to post content, but we got a good cadence now, and we're really, I'm hoping to grow it to the numbers. Leafs are one of the most followed accounts on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram in the NHL. And I want to get TikTok up to those numbers. I think we're about middle of the pack right now at 55K. So as we grow, that's ultimately my goal, is to be up there with I think the Detroit Red Wings have the most right now at about 200K. So get up there and hopefully, keep making content, because I think TikTok has such an important role in playing and connecting our brands to a younger audience, because TikTok 100%. Is where, is where the younger generations are currently consuming content. So producing content for them and allowing the Leafs account to connect with, all this different generation and hopefully build these Leafs, people into Leafs fans. And I think it also has such a the algorithm is so good at feeding content to beyond what your following is. And again, another opportunity to kind of expand the Leafs brand across into different groups. And I think that you'll see maybe ultimately the Raptors will get on, and TFC has I know they have plans to get on as well. So eventually we'll see all the team accounts on there and producing content, and because I think it's such a good platform for everyone to use. So that's it for TikTok for sure.
Definitely. And, like you said, that'll be a huge platform to build young fans. I find that with hockey, it's almost too traditional, where, the conventional methods of distribution are, your typical radio, TV, newspaper, print. But, with generations that have shorter attention spans and get their news in unconventional ways than past generations, TikTok's a perfect platform to reach that crowd that wants content quick. They want it to be engaging, and then they can get on with their day. So if that account can make a huge dent in the follower count, hopefully it'll influence people to keep following with the Leafs, and maybe get involved to the point where they may purchase a jersey or maybe even like another piece of team memorabilia down the line. So, but as we're getting close to the end of the episode, again, Adam, we thank you so much for coming on. And as we do at the end of every episode, we like to give our guests the floor to say what's on their mind and just shoot the breeze with us. So Adam, as we say quite often here on the podcast, the floor is yours.
I wasn't expecting that. No,
Curveball.
A little bit.
The old 12-6 into the dirt.
No, I think we touched a lot on what what I do and how it's, again, I think if you're a SPMA student listening to this and thinking how I can get into a sports social job, I think get that go out and get that experience as you're at Brock and use all the opportunity that you have there. They do a good job at setting up internships and volunteer opportunities, and that take advantage of them. That's what I did, and ultimately, I think I remember in my first year, a SPMA, first class, Kirsty Spence, I'm pretty sure, Dr. Spence, sorry, she definitely had brought up the importance of volunteering and putting your time in, and I think it was even a requirement in the first year class, and ultimately take those opportunities you get and make the most of them, and just build relationships, because ultimately when you go to apply for a job and at MLSE and they get thousands of applicants, it's important to have that relationship built up to differentiate yourself a little bit, and again, shoot your shots in the DM, shoot your shots on LinkedIn. I think just be sociable and connect with people, and that's really what is going to help you make those connections and get hopefully you get your career started.
For sure. Anyone listen to this episode, if you're going to take anything from this, that statement is probably the be all and end all to success in this industry. So Adam, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.